Welcome back to the AI Corner. I'm super excited to be joined by the co-founders of Fibre Fale today. I've got Julia Pahina and Eteroa with me today. Fibre Fale, for those that aren't familiar, is a Pacific-led technology and AI organization here in New Zealand. They've got an amazing mission. Their mission is to grow Pacific participation, confidence, and leadership in the technology sector. And some of the statistics that you'll hear through this episode are pretty shocking. They've certainly shocked me to the core. And what I really like about what Julia and Eti are doing is they're not just teaching people how to use tools, but they're really helping Pacific communities access technology, understand it, help to shape it, and eventually lead it, because the participation rates within technology firms or firms in New Zealand around technology are shockingly low, as I say. So we'll be understanding a bit more from Julia and Eti around some of the barriers today and some of the opportunities for Pacific communities within our technology organization. So welcome to the pod, Julia and Eti.
Woohoo! That was a great intro, Mike. Woohoo!
Thank you, appreciate it. So why don't you get us started? I've talked a little bit about what Fibre Fale is. What was the problem that you were really trying to solve when you started the organization, and what's your journey been like?
Well, we'll start with some intros, and I'm going to pass the short ball over to my amazing co-founder to kick us off and do a little bit of a life journey, and I think that will help to shape up how we answer that question around how we met and how Fibre Fale was born. So, it's over to you.
Bless you. Thank you, sister, and thank you, Mike, for this opportunity. Malo soy for mau malangi mama. Talo for lava to everyone that's watching. My full name is Ngamla Ulu Nuali'i Eteroa Tusi Pepa Winelida. So I fulfill Fatu Fala Fale Ulu Lafaele. Come September, we're adding on Fare Waka. Yes! Woo! I hail from the beautiful islands of Samoa. My parents migrated to Aotearoa in the 70s, and I was born and bred in the place of champions, Cannons Creek, Porirua. I spent 18 years of my beautiful life there until I made the journey up to Tamaki Makaurau to study computer science. So that was the entry point for me into technology. 3 hard years in computer science at AUT, graduated with flying colors somehow, and then by trade I'm a software engineer, and then somehow I tripped into being a developer evangelist, and then I must have fell in the pits of the world of startups. And so I navigated my journey in corporate technology here in Aotearoa until the point where I was in Melbourne. And it was funny because this corporate company sent me out there. And then on that day, they said, oh, by the way, we'll pay for your flights and accommodation, but you probably won't have a job when you come back past the borders. So as I was sitting in Melbourne near the Yarra River, I had a phone call to my sister that it was time to, one, choose a different path of success. Because growing up, it was always do well in school, go to university, get a good job, Bob's your uncle, well done. But as sister always tells us, we were forging new grounds. So for me to tell my parents, this corporate role is amazing, but it's not filling my cup. And so from there was the one half of how Fibre Fale came to play. Alongside with that whole journey, Mike, I think we were Robin Hood ASOS. We were working corporate, but we wanted to share the knowledge to communities. So we were teaching our communities parallel to us working at a very high pace corporate environment. So that's how I came into play. But where we got to Fibre Fale, because sister will come and tell you the other half of how Fibre Fale came to play. Thank you, and over to you, sis.
Thank you, sis. Mike, again, thank you so much for that warm introduction. My name's Julia. I was brought up by a wonderful solo mum, single mum here in Tamaki Makaurau, and then spent so many of my years overseas working in technology. So I worked as a strategist, a strategic planner, working for cochlear hearing implants in Sydney in the medtech industry, then went to London, San Diego, and then spent a little bit of time in Ghana and Africa as well. I used to work for HP as a strategic planner of United Kingdom and Ireland, and a global social strategy and a worldwide product insights lead for them in San Diego. So went overseas, did my corporate technology life similar to Ete, but really felt a deep sense of longing that there was more to life than a paycheck, there was more to life than following the ladder, and really believe that whilst technology has a lot to benefit society, there is actually a lot of harm that's done when those that are already operating at a behind the start line are going to be further left behind. And that was the part that really concerned me. So I did what any young millennial would do, and I emailed the Prime Minister. Naturally, I didn't get a response, but I decided that I was going to go right straight to the top. If you want to learn something quickly about me, there's 0 to 100 and nothing in between. So after the amazing Jacinda didn't send me a response, I decided, you know what? A question to myself was, if you have the awareness of an issue, do you have the moral obligation to do something about it? And for me, that was an easy yes. So I resigned just before COVID-19. I arrived back home February 2020 and landed my way back into Aotearoa, where I knew there was going to be really a lot of negative workplace displacement that was going to hit Pacific people. And unless we were organizing, self-determining in how we wanted to navigate things, we weren't going to be looked after from the public sector or the private sector, because I was sitting there overseas and seeing it all unfold. So when Ete and I came together, and we love this story because we met at KFC Royal Oak, and we had the same order with extra seasoning on the fries, and we always joke that there's nothing stronger than a trauma bond. I think a psychologist would see red alarm bells going off as I say that, but Ete and I had both been underestimated, we'd experienced racism, sexism and ageism all throughout our technology careers, and we knew we weren't alone. Although we were one of only a handful, as you mentioned, 4.4% are Pacific. If you cut that by how many females there are, there's about 1%. 1%. Now that is minute. So we knew that whilst our individual experiences were really upsetting, and obviously we were sharing this to one another, that it is likely that there's more people that are also experiencing what we had. And we decided we wanted to do something about it. So not only was it about shifting the participation rates of the tech industry, it was also about providing a safe home, a safe house, a place to refill, renew, to gather new skills, to find community. And a lot of our work and the outcomes is, if you enable somebody to experience true belonging, the way in which that shifts their self-confidence and their strength base to see themselves in a new light, that can be transformative for an organization, for an individual, for a family, and intergenerationally. And so that's what we've been doing over the past 4 years.
Amazing. Sounds like perfect timing in terms of you both saw the light, so to speak, and happened to cross each other's paths, which is amazing for the community and what you've been able to achieve so far. I'd be really interested to know, in terms of technology, it sounds as though the odds have almost been against Pacifica in some way in terms of being able to succeed. It's a real shame. What have been the kind of drivers of that to date? And then how do you feel or see those participation rates potentially being exacerbated by the likes of AI coming to light?
Yeah, great. I mean, maybe it's if you want to speak to the history of how our community were brought over to Aotearoa, and then I'll speak to that now. And again, the AI divide that's unfolding in front of us too.
Yeah, so Mike, just to give some context, not just yourself, but to all the viewers, a lot of our communities shifted like my parents did in the 70s, 60s, 70s to come over. And the selling tag was come to the land of milk and honey. And so the milk and honey that was sold in the islands was a new life, new opportunities, and ways to support our communities back home. So many migrated through boat, plane, and as they reached to Aotearoa is the milk and honey, we actually unfortunately had a different taste of milk and honey. It wasn't sweet. It was sour, it wasn't flowing, it was tough. And so when we arrived onto the shores of Aotearoa, the skills that we brought that we were inherently had back in the islands were labor intensive. So majority of our communities were always in the factory lines. And the dream back then was the office space. Hence why when I was growing up, the linear way of success was always the office or the upstairs or the upper ladder. And so inherently throughout the years, we've been moving. The dial hasn't gone shooting straight all the way to these corporate jobs. They've actually slowly been gone to the factory worker, factory manager, head of factory. And then let's say we do now get to the admin or the office place. It's usually at the moment now we've been saturated in that office space that we speak on now. And so that's just due to, one, we work as a community, and in the community, the main roles are the ones that we play very good at. And that's been something that we've kept in mind, because what myself and Julia have noticed is if we talk about technology, our communities participate more as consumers, and those that more in consumption of technology are not actually the leaders and the drivers of the tech that we see today.
Beautiful, sis. And just to double down on that, Mike, so that's the history of generations before us. But what we're seeing now, even in 2026, the number one industry of Pacific people is manufacturing. And so this is being passed down intergenerationally. A terminology that's been used is we were brought over as factory fodder, and that hasn't changed. That's actually become structurally embedded into where we see ourselves and where society can see us.
Right.
And even in when we think about where our Pacific women are being placed, 68% of our Pacifica women are in clerical and administration roles. Now, you and I know sitting here in AI, when we talk about automation and workforce displacement, those industries are most at risk. And so, what we're seeing right now is the challenges that Pacific communities have faced, and the reason why we've become so vocal about, we talk about the AI literacy, we talk about upskilling and productivity, but it's such a disconnected conversation to the structural baseline of where we are as a society and how that's been embedded into the ways of being. And it goes beyond just skills based. It looks at across the board, how have we embedded a group of people and said this is your role and this is your lane, and for you to aspire above that is only a dream.
Right. It's fascinating, and as you say, such different experiences across different cultures and the way that we've grown up or experienced, I guess, New Zealand and different corporate life. And you mentioned something really interesting in particular there, Julia, about it's become the way that we might think. That's because that's what we've been told, or the story that we're now telling ourselves. So are you finding that as part of your work to engage community around AI is here, it is happening, it's something that you potentially might need to get on board with? I'm not sure if that's a narrative, but is there
Yeah.
willingness and is there open arms from these individuals to want to embrace the technology, or is there, as the stories we're telling ourselves may not agree with that? How does that conversation tend to go, and
Yeah.
what sort of mindset
Yeah.
do you need to shift along the way?
So it's really great that you've opened up this question. So when we're thinking about systems change and how you shift a system or how you make change within society, one of the deepest levels to do that is mental models. Mental models are fundamentally what is like one of the, if you can shift somebody's mental model, how they understand themselves, the world, their beliefs about them, like their place in the world, you can shift their life. You can fundamentally shift their life. And the work of Fibre Fale, and probably what people see as most, is you'll see us being very visible. And we do a lot of talking and we put ourselves out there, and we really, because we're really trying to speak and find a way to tap into our community to see themselves in us, see themselves in our stories, see themselves in our lived experience and our skills, to know that that's within reach for them too. Now, we don't fool ourselves that not everyone will experience that. But one of the things that we're really, really proud of, Mike, is that last year we released the first ever Pacifica-led software engineer AI masterclass by our one and only Young New Zealander of the Year, Forbes 30 under 30, New Zealand high-tech young achiever of the, etc., 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 and who also holds, and this is the point that's really poignant here, that also holds two Matai titles, two chief titles from Samoa. So you've got somebody that's able to transcend and traverse between the artificial and the ancestral and hold that bridge. Now that's where we're finding some really powerful cut through to our community,
Right.
because we're not coming out to community to say, hey, you have to do this. This is the only way. We're trying to sell you AI, because that automatically we sound like salespeople.
Yeah.
What we're doing is we're reconciling and we're reckoning with now. Our community are at risk. They're sitting in industries that are at risk. The system is already stacked up against us. We are already experiencing inequities. It is highly unlikely that your employer is going to reskill you or upskill you. It is highly unlikely that the government is going to be rolling out full-blown AI literacy plans across the country.
Yeah.
And therefore, as a community, our strongest position is informed preparation. We can be self-determined in how we navigate this wave, just like our ancestors once did before us. Because we're not the only generations that having to experience technology or intelligence or knowledge that makes our ways of being erased. That's been our whole life. We've been navigating our whole life in that world of code switching, of double identities, of trying to find out how do you fit in and how do you not. Like it's what we're really strong at. So as we are engaging our communities, we always create space for tensions, for fears, for critiquing to come forward. And we really hold pride in ourselves as trying to hold that gray space, trying to hold two truths can be true at once, trying to hold the duality of absolutely this is unfair and there's injustice to this, and absolutely you feel valid in being afraid. And if we can hold that, and if we can help people feel belonging and safety and trust with us in that, then they're much more likely to trust us to go, okay, so what do you have to show me? Okay, so you haven't made me feel invalid. You haven't made me feel less than. You've allowed me to feel safe and courageous to take one step forward. And so that's really been what we find to be such an incredible experience. And ironically enough, what we're finding is for a lot of people that haven't existed on the margins, they're all of a sudden feeling this deep sense of, oh my God, an LLM doesn't tell my story, or oh my gosh,
Right.
it's making me seem,
Yeah.
and we're like, oh, welcome.
Yeah.
You mean you're not reflected? You're not reflected in this thing? Oh, is that your first time experiencing that?
Yeah, right.
Wow.
That would be quite
Oh,
shocking, I'd imagine, as well, because as you say, there's an expectation for many people, that when I use technology, it knows me, or it should be able to reflect me in some way, shape, or form. And I can imagine that I would hazard a guess that the frontier labs out of the west coast of the US haven't necessarily accounted for a lot of sort of Pacific data, language, cultural knowledge,
yeah.
in the same way that multiculture has largely been
Yeah.
excluded from that and is misrepresented. And as you know, individuals who are sort of close to your community and understand your heritage and that have expectations of how you want to be engaged with, that would be quite conflicting to how you want to use technology. So not only does it not represent you, it also might be quite a bit of a repellent in terms of they might feel a bit icky using the technology.
Totally.
Yeah.
But one of the things that we also know is our community has been navigating the world where they're not reflected, they're not valued, they're not made visible their whole lives.
Right, okay,
So this isn't new.
sure.
This
Right.
that's not a new experience to not be seen or to not have your knowledge be counted. Now it's just reconciling and helping our community understand, okay, here's why it doesn't show you in this way. Here's the business model it's built on that's profiteering off it being used in this certain way. Now, here is where our cultural knowledge, our cultural taonga, our gifts, our mialofa, all of our strengths, we can decide, does AI deserve this?
Yeah.
We know that it doesn't have it. We know that it will never receive it unless it's given from us, unless it's extracted from us. And you all can sit here and have a choice in this moment about what you give and what you decide is not worthy of it. What you decide that it should never touch. And so, yeah, it's as we come out and we talk to our communities in that way, and we say that no is a legitimate answer. You know, there's like that's a legitimate decision to make, and that we don't have to fall under what a lot of AI hype, and this is one of your questions around, you know, AI is inevitable. That assumption of natural law without really honoring the fact that that's a political choice. That's a human choice.
Yeah.
You're very correct.
Yeah. So anyway, and also I want to pass to Ete because Ete's been doing a lot of work teaching AI to Pacific Church ministers, which again is something that you won't be hearing. Like I'm really proud of that piece of work that we're doing as well. And maybe Ete, you want to explain why that work is so poignant for our community too.
Yes, so Mike, so I'm speaking from, now it's important when we speak about the Pacific, we're not just clubbed in one box. So I'm coming from the experience of a Samoan perspective too, but in the Samoan hierarchy, for our pastors are very honored in our communities, and to even have conversations with our ministers in the community is one, an honor, but two, it's not very spoken of because the rule of thumb is whatever the pastor says we follow. And so to even get access to speak to our community pastors was very insightful because they live in a world where the four doors of the church is their world, and yes, the sheep comes in and they talk about this is what it means to live, this is life, but these ministers were actually very brave to actually open the doors of their own minds, like Sister said, to try and support the sheep that comes into the congregation. Getting to actually demystify and actually, Sister always says it's the doom and gloom, but we actually are not scared to tell them like, hey, the more we close the doors to our minds, the more that we won't be setting up our sheep, for this example, for
Right.
the best, for what they need to do in the future. And so, for example, we were talking to these ministers about the AI agent Faith called Christopharian, where all the AI agents created their own church, their own doctrines, their own
Yep.
values, and you should have seen the ministers gobsmacked. These ministers spent 10, 13 years of their lives through Bible college, and this AI agent just rocked up out of nowhere and created faith. Now that created, like Sister said, the tension, but also the
Mm.
tension that if we don't have these discussions in these safe community churches, then if it's not them they're going to hear from, it's going to come from an AI agent or someone that will bring hype. And so
Yeah,
educating these leaders in our communities is very important because me and Sister can't do this job alone.
absolutely.
Be a community effort. And so to get their trust, but also to educate them, for me, that was a blessing. Yeah.
That's really really impressive work, as you say, is it in terms of you've identified that half the battle is empowering these individuals or the communities to understand and be able to make decisions around this isn't inevitable, as you say, Julia. This is a choice I can make and I can own whether I use the technology or don't
Yes.
or have an impact. And then scaling your own efforts through the key opinion leaders of the community to at least help others open their minds to this is a potential risk or a potential opportunity. And so, do you find that the ministers in your space they are now using the technology, they've become, or do you find that they are now just more aware, and that means that they are able to at least open the dialogue with others? Like, what are the sort of impacts as a result of being able to empower and educate those that are able to have quite a heavy influence over the rest of the community?
So in the ministers, there were different groups. There were one group, they already used AI, and they're like, oh, this is lovely. Oh, I'm going to take a photo of me in a robe that I can't fit, etc., etc. And then you've got another group who
Yeah,
just was like, nah, that's not
not for me.
Jesus. Nah, not for me. And then, so these were the two groups. And I had to be like, oh my gosh, do I have to, like, I know I said I got a big back, but my back was really big on the session, Mike, because I had to bring the two together. And so
Yeah,
what
right.
was it did cause debate. Actually cause debate. And here's the thing, Mike, we don't make enough space for these. I call it healthy. We have to have these conversations. And so
Sure.
hearing the two not bicker, but actually say, no, it fixes my life. And then the other two goes, I'm too scared. So the impact was one, they all got to help each other to use the tool. But three, they became more discerned. It's so funny, Mike. They preach every day about discernment, but they
Yeah.
couldn't practice it on a technical tool. And to see these ministers actually create discernment and actually be more responsible, I had to tell them too, yes, you can fit the robe, but we also had to educate them that in 10, 20 years, that image of you is somewhere in San Francisco, somewhere in those data centers, and let's say you pass to see Jesus, would you actually give consent to give that photo to sell protein shakes or more pasta robes? And it made them think. And that's
Yeah.
where we gave them the option of, yeah, you all have a choice and you all have the right of consent. And so, yes, they're gallivanting because they're all wise with AI, but they're actually more discerning. And you know what's actually interesting? These ministers they actually invited me to church. So they were all from different denominations. And I heard they wasn't from the same denomination, but the fact that it gave me opportunity to speak to these 100 members and to be like, hey, let's not fear it, but let's continue to have conversations because it didn't just stay at the leadership level, Mike. We got young people who are already using AI. And so it's just trying to make sure that it's the impact of Fibre Fale. Whoever comes into Fibre Fale doesn't just have that initial conversation and that's it. It goes to the dinner table. It goes to the next generation. And so the impact isn't just one session. Honestly, it's the whole community. And so
Good
I'm
on you.
very proud of that. Oh,
Very
thank you,
powerful.
Mike.
Super powerful. I want to touch on an element that you're both pointing to, which is there's a lot of sort of grassroots efforts here in terms of
Yeah.
conversations with probably families and I'd imagine some
Yeah.
schools potentially as well.
Yeah.
Naturally, that can take you to a point, but influence over the big organizations of the country or the frontier labs and having influence over how they use data, how they regulate, how
Yeah.
they educate. You called it out earlier, Julia, relying on the government to educate
Yeah.
your community at the level that they need is probably not going to happen overnight. So how do you think about coming at it from both the grassroots, you've covered that, but also sort of top down and going
Upstream.
yeah, how do you have influence over that space, and what sort of conversations are you able to have? Is that even an effective path for you?
Yeah. I mean, Mike, this is probably when you're going to get even more maybe saddened, but it's really, so we talk about upstream and downstream. So in order to shift a system, you've got to move upstream and downstream. Downstream, and it's not downstream in a negative sense, but you can see downstream as in it's already out, it's already rolled out. Now it's just how do we use it? How do we think about it? How do we say no? How do we say yes, etc. So that's a huge part of what we're doing. We've got digital classes, which are all for free. There's 2,000 people that have signed up to AI with Eteroa on our first masterclass. And that's just like, we did that off our own backs and have built that, and that's really proud. There's also our in-person AI masterclasses, organization masterclasses. So that work has been really incredible. Now, to your point around how are we influencing upstream, how are we sitting in government rooms, how are we influencing policies, or I'm part of the Human Rights Commission in terms of their external advisory panel around AI, emerging technologies, and human rights. It's a long line.
Yeah.
So we're sitting at that table, which is one table. So that's one piece of work. Additionally, we are trying to advocate alongside of the incredible Māori leaders like Dr. Karaitiana, who's doing a lot of legwork, a huge amount of legwork to both publish white papers, frameworks to build that intellectual infrastructure. Now, for us, it's our next goal. We've been funded to go ahead and do 2 pieces of research projects next year around building what does that intellectual infrastructure look like around Pacific AI governance, about Pacific AI architecture, and we haven't decided who's going to get us because we're shopping around a little bit for the different tertiary providers, but we've been funded to do that next year as part of going upstream. And that's really because I saw, just like you say, as much as we can only skill so many people at the speed of human, because the other thing that's really important to mention, Mike, is the reason why people are hiring Fibre Fale is because we're not tech consultants, because we've been sitting in the community doing all of this work for free for years, because they know our faces, they see our faces, and they can get angry at us, happy with us, excited with us. They can be human with us.
Yeah.
And that is the fundamental part that we're recognizing is people love us for both presence and trust and visibility and relationship and all of the things that we bring in on the human side that again is just we're finding is just irreplaceable even amongst all of the advancements. So our intention is next year as part of these research projects, these masters, and intertwining them between Ete sitting at the technical layer and then myself operating at the governance, ethics and layer, that they'll be able to be interwoven and complementary to build this infrastructure. Because even as I look at right now, when we're thinking about AI governance, it's all through a Western frame. It's dominated by a Western frame, right?
Yep.
Same with data sovereignty, same with a lot of these conversations. But because it's so new to our community, because as you've heard, only 4.4% of us work in the industry, how could we expect that that thinking has been done before if we are only just breaking new ground as leaders in this space? And so what we've started to realize is, as much as we want to look ahead, and there are incredible Pacific leaders across the globe, it doesn't necessarily mean that also they're coming from the trusted networks that we have here locally. And can we, as Ete mentioned, have big backs, have strong backs? I'd say we've got strong to take that on and to figure out, again, building out that new lane so that as we're advocating in these spaces, again, we're going to be seen as more credibility with a body of knowledge or with a body of validated knowledge by different institutions, as well to, I guess, what we tend to find is people can often bucket us as community advocates.
Yeah.
And that's the challenge. They'll see you maybe, Mike, as an intellectual peer. They'll see us as, you're doing charity work for the right of community. And that's part of what's been really difficult for us to make some of those moves upstream is, again, we can be trivialized or we can be seen as, can you just show and share about your story about what it experienced, like rather than seeing us as we have valid intellectual infrastructure to add into the conversation that expands it out, of which you can learn from and it can make better work versus, can you just sit here and tell us a nice story? Or can you tell us how you think and feel about community problems? And so really trying to shift that power imbalance that can tend to occur. And again, similarly, the stereotyping or just the societal norms that have been baked into, if you're doing purpose-led work, if you're doing social enterprise work, it's somewhat less credible or it's somewhat like less intelligent in a way. It's that's been a really interesting journey for us to have gone on over the past few years.
I hope that this podcast episode at least can open
Oh,
at least one more conversation, because the ambition and the vision is very, very admirable, and obviously the work you guys have put in so far is pretty phenomenal, off bootstrapping it and off your own back. So fingers crossed, it's more fun around the corner for you as well.
Thank you,
Love
Mike.
about your programs you're doing from an
yeah.
education standpoint. So why don't you tell us a bit more about what it is you're doing at the grassroots in terms of like what is am I coming to your house? Am I dialing
Oh my God.
learning about? Like, let's share
Yeah.
a bit about how the program works and what am I going to learn
Cool.
if I join?
Ete, I'll pass to you, sis.
Okay, Mike. So if you come, you probably not come to my house. Any space that is available for us. So what we do is we take them on a journey on really demystifying a lot of the terminology. Keep in mind, a lot of our communities, like Mike, if you go to the night market, all the posters are AI images. So it's not no one's using it. It's just been a massive like dump of AI, and it's just our job in that session is just to bring a vacuum and take out all that fog and be like, hey, the next time someone talks to you about AI, let us debunk it. So we go through actually the definition of AI. And then we show them a very simplified technical framework, because if we had the whole time, it would probably take ages, just so they actually hold that foundation. And then from there, we actually remind them, because a lot of them think, oh, I don't use AI every day. Ah, rah, rah, rah. We have to remind them unlocking their phones is AI biometrics. Them taking a photo, it's meant to be the bush, but it's another person. That's another story. That's all just the vision detection. Like everything that they encounter is AI, and just reminding them that they are actually the experts as well.
Yeah,
And
right.
then from that, we take them through use cases and really we tailor it. So, like just last week, we just came back from Ngāti Otara Marae. So, the whole marae came through. So, we really base it off the community that we actually look after. And then we actually get them to practice. Now, sometimes people are like, oh, that's simple. Hey, your simple is other people's brand new. And also, when we have people like that in the group, we actually have to learn to teach each other, because if you want to be better, you've got to go and teach someone else. So we do that. Now, usually that takes 90 minutes. It goes really fast. The
Yeah.
reason why it goes fast, Mike, is because this is the only time that they have discussion. We end up having way more questions, and a lot of it moves into the ethics of
Yeah.
AI. And so we have to hold space for the technical and the use cases, but also for these, because yes, they look to us, but we can't give the answers within. Because what if I do this and there's the answer? You don't have to. And so we do a lot of those grassroots just to hold ground. And what we've noticed is when we go through the grassroots, it actually leaves us to move even further, and that's us actually upskilling organizations. And that really shows the tiers of the work that we do after. And the grassroots gives us trust.
Yeah.
I think, as you said, it's so important to go slow, to go fast, right? You've got to understand. You dive straight into prompting or this model for that or that tool, and I'm diving straight into Gen AI, of course, right there. But
Yeah.
if you start people at the foundations, they can build that level of confidence and actually understand the why behind what is happening. And then you mentioned the piece around use cases and then corporations. I'd love to
Yeah.
understand, did your work start to move into we're empowering people on a personal level around this is
Yeah.
happening around you, your choice to engage or not, and this at least
Yes.
you can. And then you're taking individuals on a career type journey to say, hey, if you want to now build with AI or work with
Yeah.
AI as a peripheral, do you kind of take them on that journey and help them with those use cases as well?
Yes. Yes, Mike, you are on.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing is, and Izzy's underselling herself as usual, but when she's teaching about what is machine learning, what is deep learning, what's the difference of neural networks, what is data, how does data actually work, what data is like good data, what data do we never want, like she's completely underselling. Like a lot of people find that quite alarming that we don't just jump into, oh, I want to use ChatGPT. And it's like, because of that reason, because if we can give people a greater baseline to know the language that the tech industry throws around, and again, can demystify that the terminology of AI is intentionally vague because it can mean anything and anyone, and people can kind of get away with a lot when they say that.
Yeah.
We really kind of take this mindset of let's give our people some defense systems And the defense systems is information. Because if they're more informed, they're less likely to have people push on them default adoption.
Right.
And it becomes more deliberate consumption. It's deliberate choices. So we really take it as almost like we're crusaders that are just like, here's your sword, or like here's your, like, we kind of get excited about, like, yes, if a tech vendor comes to you and starts to hoodwink you with all the snake oil, you now know what to say back, and here are some good questions and clarifying questions to protect us,
Yeah.
to protect our community.
Good on.
So that's at a community level.
Yep.
Then absolutely, especially for small business owners. Small business owners will be some of the fastest and I guess the most likely to adopt Gen AI, especially because of how much they can now create, build on their own as entrepreneurs. So we've absolutely started to build out, here's how you might build a custom GPT. Here's Claude Project, Claude Cowork, Claude Code. Here's how we could use that to build your website, to build your marketing and sales tools. Like, absolutely, that's another sort of sub-segment of who we support and how we support. The next one is inside of a lot of our values organizations that are not just Pacific, they're also non-Pacific, where they're trying to decide realistically, they're choosing between the range of Gen AI tools, and they know that there's some major ethical tensions, and they also recognize that in their spaces, they're working on tiny lean budgets, and how can they augment their staff to harness the benefits whilst also holding the ethical tensions that exist. And we come in and help support them around within their context of their organizations and doing their values-led work. How might they start to apply that into everyday use cases, into workflows, work redesign, into thinking about who do they want to be in the age of AI? Not just how do they want to use it, but how do they want to actually, who are they becoming as an organization? And the one that we often end up landing on, Mike, is that existential question around why do you exist? And if you can hold that answer around why you exist, the secondary question to that is AI in service of that?
Yeah, I do.
Does that strengthen or dilute that? Because if you're a values-led organization where your community stakeholders are the key piece to your business running, you're operating with a completely different mindset when we talk about productivity than if you're a private organization where your key stakeholders are your shareholders.
Yeah, right. Makes sense.
So that's a huge part of our work that we're finding is, again, not a 1 hour masterclass, because the conversations and the stretching and like just a lot of good, hard questions, important questions. I know the industry loves to call people who ask questions Luddites. It's like the easiest get out of jail free card is to call somebody who's asking questions a Luddite or a laggard. But this is intentional, this is critical thinking being exercised and not blind adoption. And then the third piece to all of this is another key segment is what we do at a governance and board and leadership level. Yeah. Because whilst obviously it's really easy for organizations to go, I want my staff to catch up. They need to use oh my God, my staff. It's really important to kind of take a step back and go, okay, as board directors, one of your core responsibilities to fulfill is purpose, mission, and strategy. Now, if AI is fundamentally shifting the market, competition, products, services, external realities, then you have to, as a board director, as a leader, as somebody that's sitting in a place of governance, be able to look at what the future holds with enough clarity to decide what's the direction of your organization. And so it's not just board directors learning AI literacy, it's equally, let's start to shift how we understand this technology and the impacts of it so that we know what direction and how to encourage our people, our communities, our consumers to follow us along.
Yeah.
So that kind of really speaks to a lot of my strategy background as well. And again, we try and blend, and we always end up blending when people start with an AI literacy conversation and they go up, like it starts at efficiency and then we go existential and then we come back down to efficiency and then it's back up to like, it's like, I love it. I have so much fun. I love it. I feel like I'm going to the gym for my brain. And it's so fulfilling for me. I just get I'm such a lover of learning and collective learning. And yeah, as you can see, you ask me a question and I'll give you a 10-minute ramble of just excitement to share. Yeah.
I was going to say, I love the energy and enthusiasm you both have for the topic, the mission, the AI, of course, it's part and parcel of being on the podcast. But I think It's really impressive, and as I say, you've obviously made massive grounds and seen immense sort of progress in your space. Just before we do close up, I'd love to hear from you both. Like, what is one story that has really surprised you in a positive way in terms of a really successful kind of outcome for an individual, the way they've changed their life or a career transition or a business? Anything that really sticks with you, I'd love for you both to share something that you tend to rely on or lean on as a kind of case study for the work you've been doing.
Please, I'll go first, sis.
Oh, okay, go.
I think I'm gonna tell two parts. One is what's it called? I think a story that always gets me all the time will always be supporting our communities. So there was this old lady who was just too scared. The reason why she was scared wasn't because everyone's this, is because, like Julia said, this isn't our first rodeo navigating technology. So this beautiful auntie, so they used to have a software engineer from America who came and did a language app for them. And then the fella ran off and then started charging the community to get access to the language app that they supported. So I was dealing with a lady that was already carrying this technical trauma. And so I don't know anything. And I didn't know that one moment of me walking in, teaching them, gave her the confidence to go back into technology again. And I think for me, it's just, yes, this may not be a big as corporate group. This may not be hundreds of thousands of people. But if we're able to get one of our beautiful nanas back into understanding technology and removing the fear, then that makes my job amazing. The other part of it is not just that encounter, but me doing this work with Julia has helped me build my confidence. They used to call me dumb. They didn't think I
Yeah.
was the flashiest software engineer. I had a very rough time in technology. And for me to actually unclog my fears and actually know that, nah, I got this, has actually given me more strength to carry on and to learn more technical information, not only in the tech realm, but also in AI, has made me feel like, you know what, I'm here on Earth for a reason, and it's to help this Nana, and to also to bring more of our future leaders into technology. So thank you very much, Mike. Bless.
Good on you, Ete. I love that. Both examples you gave are people reframing how they tell stories to themselves in some way, shape, or form. And it's just that lived experience and how someone can influence you. So big hats off to you. But not Julia.
Oh, I mean, I can't not honor Ite because you talk about telling a story of a life changed. I mean, Ite didn't have to follow me to come and do this crazy little business over here. You know, again, I went and talked to her parents and really reassured them that she would be safe. She is such an important person in our community, and to think that by us choosing not to be passive bystanders to injustice, to a system that we saw as broken, for us to go, you know what? I've got enough audacity to believe I could do something about that.
Yeah.
That then, Mike, we've got the first ever Young New Zealander of the Year to be a Samoan software engineer. We've got the first ever high tech young achiever to also hold that same title, to be from Porirua, Cannons Creek, a community that is fundamentally seen as in a deficit lane by a majority of people. We've got our Forbes 30 under 30. She wrote a children's book, one of the very few Pacific STEM children's book of a young girl that learns how to fix a glitch in a computer. That's been bought and shared to over 2,000 young people, that goes and talks to schools across the country for free. Like, that to me is just, will forever be one of the best things I've ever done in my life, and fundamentally has shifted the whole entire community and the tech industry. Like, everybody knows Ite's name. Now, aside from that side, because again, I could sit here crying and just
Yeah.
like, you know, I'm just Ite's story in and of itself existing in the way that she does in the world is changes lives. Now, equally, we get so many messages, Mike. So I would love to show you the level of messages that we get from people saying, I cannot, your confidence in the way that you speak makes me feel like I want to advocate for myself. I have people that have decided to resign from some of their corporate tech jobs and become entrepreneurs because they feel confident. And yeah, Mike, I don't want to lie. Every time somebody messages telling me that they resigned, I celebrate.
Yeah.
I celebrate.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times they're being put, like they're being seen in a way which they're not getting leadership positions. They're not getting promotions. They're being seen as workers. We are fundamentally, as a community, quite often seen at the worker layer and seen at that factory layer, but just now with fancier titles and slightly more salary. But the mindset of us has not shifted. The main philosophy of Fibre Fale is, do we spend our whole time trying to participate in, or do we redirect that energy to evolving from within? And when we made that philosophy change about, hey, look, the industry is fundamentally built on a business model of capitalism. It is moving with these levers and drivers. And as much as we would like to shift its direction to kind of be more inclusive, to be more equitable, from an ethics point of view, you cannot trade off efficiency and equality and have them at the same level, because the business model won't hold. For a lot of these organizations, the business model is not going to hold. So asking ourselves, well, what is within our circle of control? It's where do we redirect our energy, our resource, our brilliance, our intelligence, and what can we create from that place ourselves? And so one of the biggest things that has come out of that is the number of young people, the number of older people that have said, I've just started my own company. I've just launched my own product. We had one of our alumni, Mike, that just this year was a finalist of Young New Zealander of the Year. And just after Ete was the winner. Like,
Amazing.
that is the most incredible outcome.
Yeah.
It's momentum, Mike.
Yeah.
It's not to be, for us, it's not to be the first, but to look behind us and to see the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, and see them come through shining brighter than ever before, because they now believe in themselves and believe in their existence in a whole new way.
Well done, guys, in terms of the courage to kind of carve a new path and to set a benchmark as well, I think, which is really impressive. And Julia, you've given a lot of well-deserved credit to Ete, but you have to give yourself credit for stepping out of obviously a very, very successful career and to take on the challenge as well. So again, hats off to you both and the work you're doing in building the Pacific Tech Village, as I understand it.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Tonight.
Thank you, Mike. That was cool as.
Well, I'm so pleased you were able to join us. And thank you to all of our listeners for hearing the great story from Ete and Julia and the work that they're doing. Please do follow along for the work they're doing on socials. Get involved if you're part of the community and want to support as well. And if you would like to hear more from other New Zealand leaders who are driving AI adoption and awareness and literacy to affect change, please do subscribe and join in for the next episode from another great leader. But until then,
Woo!
moving up.
Get right, yes!